You're listening to Relatable with Stephanie Michelle, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Relatable. I am your host, Stephanie Michelle, and like the show says, we're going to be talking about things that have to do with relating, and one of the topics that we haven't covered yet is how to relate with money. More importantly, what should we be teaching our children about in terms of how to relate with money? So when I was thinking about this and preparing for the show, I tried to reflect on my own lessons in my childhood about money, and I don't honestly remember too many of them. I remember my parents being busy. My parents divorced when I was 10, and so there was a lot of energy towards that and just kind of functioning around how we were going to do this divorce thing and more about custody and visits and things like that. I remember a lot of chaos around that. I don't remember too many lessons about money. I remember them doing things and referring to money, but not actually talking it through with us. And so I didn't have any conversations about savings and investment. Those were things that I had to learn later in life. And I would, definitely get hints of my parents talking about these things, but they just didn't talk to us about them. The other thing that I remember about money is sometimes it felt like it was being talked about in a negative way. Maybe not having enough or making it clear that there was something that we could not have because of money. So there was that kind of energy that was put out there. So I've done a lot of learning on my own, and I like the idea of reflecting back and thinking about how things would be different if I had some of those lessons earlier and at the right time. And that's why I'm joined today in the studio with Dr. Lee Hausner, who's an expert on this subject. So let me tell you about Dr. Lee Hausner. She is an internationally recognized clinical psychologist, business consultant, and family wealth advisor. She served as a senior psychologist for the Beverly Hills United School District for 19 years. She currently is the senior managing director for First Foundation Advisors, an acknowledged expert on psychological issues involving wealth transfer. She has been a presenter at the World Economics Forum in Switzerland and is a frequent participant in high-wealth private client conferences for major financial institutions. She's been a frequent guest in national radio, television, and is a quoted expert in publications such as The Wall Street Journal, Times, Forbes, Fortune, Privilege, Town and Country, and Worth magazine. And if that's not enough, she's wrote several books on the topic. So this is an honor to have such an expert in the studio to talk about money, but in particular, like, what should we be telling our children about it? So thank you for being here.
Well, it's a pleasure. It really is. It is an interesting topic. It's an important topic.
Yes.
Because we live both in hopefully a spiritual world and a material world. Mm-hmm. And we have to pay attention to both. I think I probably became much more aware of money issues as a psychologist in Beverly Hills.
Uh-huh.
There I was sort of faced with a district of interesting types of wealth, all mm-hmm. kinds of wealth, because Beverly Hills is a community that's made up of some first-generation wealth creators, individuals who are living on trust funds now, mm-hmm. second and third generation trust funds, individuals in the entertainment industry. For many of them, it was more like sudden wealth. They hadn't grown up with wealth, and suddenly they've got wealth. Integrating foreign populations that were coming in with wealth and with various attitudes. And I think my expectation prior to coming into that district was that, a district of extreme wealth, everyone would be doing very well, the children would be very advantaged. It was not the case.
They wouldn't have anything to talk about, no problems.
No problems. I mean, we would just buy it all away.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds a little naive, but I absolutely sat there and said, oh my God, what is going on here? And actually my experiences with Beverly Hills, and I'm really very grateful mm-hmm. for that experience, because if I had worked for another school district, I maybe wouldn't have been so acutely aware. Led me to write the book. And the first book that I wrote a book called Children of Paradise, Successful Parenting for Prosperous Families. Mm-hmm. So obviously I was really concerned if you worked hard to become successful and there's wealth, how do you look at that in a strategic way so that the next generation gets functional? Because that is really what we want to see. We want to see a progression of successful multi-generation families. And that book was very important because, interestingly enough, it was one of the first books in the field of looking at wealth. I mean, there were a lot of books that were written about poverty and immigration, but everyone was sort of had the attitude, well, you've got money, so we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
It was interesting because when my book first came out, and I went on the book tour, and I did some prep, and the people that were prepping me for this book tour said, you know, you better be prepared for a negative interview. Someone is going to say, Dr. Hausner, with all the problems in the world of, you know, poverty, you know, why are you concerned with wealth? I had this wonderful answer because I was prepared for this. But when my book came out, right about that time, we had some high-profile issues. One of the Kennedy boys was dead. We had issues of Onassis. We had a lot of public acknowledgement that there were some very wealthy individuals who were in big trouble. And nobody asked me that question. I mean, I was so disappointed because what I was really going to say is why I was interested in issues of affluence is because those are the people who will be in the position to make decisions. I mean, there's no question that if you have a considerable amount of money, you are in the position.
Absolutely.
People come to you for advice, and so I felt it was even more important that we make sure that being raised in a privileged environment, you came out with good values, good sensibility, and an understanding that money is to be stewarded.
Yes.
That there's an aspect of stewardship about wealth that I felt was really important and needed to be taught.
Absolutely. Today we'd call them influencers. We hear that phrase all the time. You know, these are people that can make a big difference and they influence us. So yeah, we want them to be sound and happy and making good decisions. So
absolutely making good decisions.
Well, so let's start from the beginning. So when you think about when you've seen these people and you started to focus on this and you've heard their problems and you started to peel back and say, okay, well, I now want to make sure next generations will do better at this. So what lessons should we be teaching our children about money, and in particular when? When does that first lesson start and what is it?
Well, it's interesting that when you said you were recalling what you learned about money in your family, you didn't really have many memories.
I don't.
Because there are a lot of money messages that we get growing up. You know, money's the root of all evil, you have to save. I mean, just a lot of spend freely because tomorrow may not come. I mean, you know, kids can grow, they definitely grow up with certain kinds of money messages. But the interesting thing about money is that it's still the last taboo. I mean, if you look at what's going on television, people are talking about all kinds of topics. I think that some of the people on these talk shows, they must get them from Central Casting because I can't believe that people would really have those kind of problems and come and talk about them on TV.
Be willing to talk about it. Right?
Money is a funny kind of topic. And the interesting thing about money issues, when you talk about marriages and what causes a marriage to break up, high percentage of a breakup of marriage is around money. But in only 15% of those cases is it because there wasn't money. So in other words, there may have been money, it's how money was used, was money being used as a control, all these psychological issues around money. I am concerned that also we are a society that is very much in debt. People don't understand budgeting. They've got this credit card and they think that as long as they put on the credit card, it's really going to be good.
And lifestyle is perpetrated through entertainment and now through social media, and they want that, right? They're going after that instead of going, well, this is what I have, and I should manage this, right?
Now, you know, what's interesting about even on budgeting, a partner, Doug Freeman and I, we developed a financial boot camp, which we ran for one of the major financial institutions for about 10 years. And they offered that as a perk to the children of their Uber clients. So we ran 3 a year, and there would be about 30 young adults that would come. And one of the modules that we created was how to be your own CFO. So we were trying to teach how you budget. And in order to budget, you have to learn what are fixed and what are discretionary expenses. Let me tell you, it was really hard for these were good kids, you know, from very wealthy families to really understand that. And in every session, somebody would ask, and they would ask it seriously, would Starbucks be considered fixed or discretionary?
What age were these kids?
In their 20s.
20s, okay.
In the 20s. I mean, you know, it's hard to understand how to budget if you don't know how to allocate. Here is what I have to spend money for, so therefore, this is what I have left over. And so this is all I could spend. I think, though, that you start doing training about money when kids are very young. Kids can learn about money. I think by the time a child is 8 years old, I use allowances. And I think the allowance is important is because it's our first money management tool. And an allowance shouldn't be so great that the kids can get whatever they want, but it shouldn't be so little they can't
No
make
Lamborghini purchases.
some choices, right?
yeah. I agree with that.
And if they choose to buy something that is not really a good purchase, is going to break, let them do it. And let this thing fall apart so that they see that they experience it's not a wise choice. So I use that allowance as a money management tool. Now, I don't use it punitively. So in other words, I think that there's responsibilities that kids have to fulfill. And if they don't fulfill them, we're not going to punitively take away the allowance. But for example, suppose the task is cleaning up your room.
Right.
And the child does not clean up their room. So Friday, when you're giving the allowance, you deduct for the cost that you were charging to clean up that room. So that now, if I deduct that,
Yeah.
then let me tell you, you're going to clean the room the next time.
Yeah.
So I'm not using it as a punitive. I'm saying this is how the world operates.
You almost use it like a paycheck. You know, it's like you're going to get an allowance just like you would get a paycheck at an employer every Friday. But
there are things you're supposed to do.
yeah, but if you cost our company money, i.e. this household, then we're going to put that on there.
That works effectively. Then by the time they're in high school, I suggest let them create a budget. But this is very important, people. You have line item veto. Okay.
Parents have line item veto. I bet you the parents
get
are like,
line
"Woo!"
item veto. But it's interesting when they create a budget, they've had some input, how much it's going to cost, what's my clothing going to cost. They have some input and they get a sense about what it really is like to be budgeting. And a credit card is given not in addition to the budget. I believe the kids need a credit card. As emergency situations come in. The minute they start going out on their own.
Okay.
So because
driving on their own.
When they're driving on their own, they definitely need a credit card because something can come up. However, what goes on the credit card is part of the budget, unless there's an unusual expense. So the credit card isn't, I have a budget and I have this credit card that I can just buy whatever I want. Those are how you start these sound money kinds of conversations as they're growing up. Because I will tell you, the minute they go off to college, they walk onto the college campus, and the first thing that they see? The credit card companies are all lined up.
Just
waiting.
Yeah.
Here, have a credit card.
Yeah.
And so if they haven't had some sort of sense about appropriate allocation of funds, then they don't know.
Yeah.
Now, I also love it if kids get work experience, and I don't care how much money the family has. Work experience starts to ground somebody on what it means to earn money.
Do you have an age that you like to recommend work experience?
They can have work experience as early as possible. My granddaughter actually had a very good job. She was about 11. The people across the street paid her to walk their dog in the afternoon when she came home from school. Well, let me tell you something. She was earning money walking that dog, and then the family moved to New York. She was so disappointed that she lost her job.
Yeah.
So, younger kids can do things to earn money. I even actually believe in the household. There are certain chores that you do because you're a member of the family. But I believe you can post jobs for pay. For example, cleaning the basement, washing the car.
So maybe a little extra bulletin board that these jobs are available
These
if
are
you want
available
them.
for pay.
Clean out the basement.
Anything that you would maybe hire someone else to do, so they get a sense, they get that work money kind of connection.
I love that. I think that's.
Now there's another thing that I did that I've done ever since. I give for significant gifts to family members. I give stock. Because years and years ago, I have a nephew who is now 50-something. He was 13, and I gave him some shares of McDonald's stock, which I thought was cute. I should have bought the McDonald's stock myself. That stock went up and split, but it started my nephew on the idea that you invest money and you make money.
Yeah.
So I've always tried to find a stock that relates. Say like sailing, I'm going to find a sailing stock. If it's a young fashionista, I'm probably going to buy stock in a company that individual has some relationship with. But the idea now of expanding beyond just the budgeting to say there's a world of investing. Now there are families that have formed actually investment clubs.
Yeah.
And they talk about, they get a pool of money and everyone kind of has a little competition and they get to invest. They've educated the kids. These are usually kids that are by the time they're in high school.
Yeah.
On how to invest. So now you're setting a a system also so that they learn that they can make their money earn money rather than spend it and it's gone.
When you said that, what came up for me, I just reimagined my childhood of sitting at my grandparents' house at a holiday and us all kind of coming to the table and talking about our investments, which just seems like it seems so meaningful. Like that would really start, both like an entrepreneurial spirit, definitely learning about investment, but also like showing how you need to take care of each other. Because I just really quickly imagine like my aunt having something to say about a certain stock, or how, she learned a lesson on that one that I didn't know about, and vice versa, sharing that with the aunts and uncles. So I actually like that as an idea to help families stay together and show how they can support each other by just knowledge. And
families have actually had this one family that was wonderful. They kind of did a contest. So everyone was allocated a certain amount, and every quarter they compared their portfolios, and whoever's portfolio was up got a little bit more. And the person whose portfolio was up all the time was the 16-year-old, because he invested like in Nike tennis shoes, in the computer technology that he knew about. And so it was great for him. It was a learning experience for everybody. And as you're right, it's a bonding thing for the family. They come together around something that is substantive. And it opens the door to talk about money. It prepares also the conversation of, this is particularly sometimes a problem when there's affluence. And kids are going to have to get married, and they're going to have that prenuptial conversation, or they're going to have to talk about, how they deal with money. Prior to getting married. It is a big topic. Well, if you've talked about money freely while kids are growing up, it's much easier for them to be talking about it at that particular time. And if they've had some knowledge and some comfort in dealing with money, or being involved in financial decisions, I think it's really interesting if the family is going to make a major purchase that we research. And maybe we let everyone research. We're going to buy a new car. Everybody go and see what kind of best price they could figure out for this car. What a great experience that is in terms of life skills, but in terms of really understanding how you evaluate something monetarily. See, these are all, and they're easy to do. These are
so easy to do. And I just keep going back to like thinking like, instead of making money this issue of taboo, like these are actual, using money as an opportunity to to bond with your family and to help each other understand how to problem solve and come up with solutions and creatively think. Like it's such a rich topic to like get closer to your family if you start to talk about, rather than, oh, we can't talk about that.
Now, it's interesting. There's a little more conversation, although it may have been a little bit more negative as you experienced, if the family doesn't have money. I have found that in families where there is limited money, the kids are a little bit more involved because we can't afford a new car. Or you want money to date when you're in high school, go get a job. We can't afford this, does come up. So in those families, they do get a sense that money is finite. In wealthy families, one of our big problems is there's no message that's finite. Kids come home from school and it's spring vacation, the brochures are out for the next trip, and the new car is in the driveway, and the house is being redecorated. So there's not much of a sense that finite. And yet they get out into the world and it's finite. And it's often a very rude awakening that they get struck with that. I had a client that I loved. They were a very comfortable family. But what she said is, I don't want my kids to grow up in a lifestyle that they may not be able to afford on their own. I just loved that kind of philosophy. And so they led a very solid, stable kind of life. They certainly lived below the radar. And they were trying to teach their kids the just basic good values. Not only in terms of how to deal with money, but how to deal with life. But that whole thing about, I don't want my kids to become accustomed to a lifestyle that they could not afford on their own, I thought was a really very important concept.
Yeah, I do too. Can you think of any lessons that you've come across in working with clients and people that full of good intention but caused a lot of problems in terms of how they were teaching their kids about money? Like they thought they were doing really good, and then it created more problems in the end?
Well, I think the biggest problem is the overindulgence. And when you tend to overindulge, if you grew up without a lot of money and suddenly you're very successful, you always wanted that new bicycle. remember your nose pressed against the glass, your kid's going to have 7 new bicycles. You are going to absolutely overindulge because you think that that's the right thing to do, and that is the worst that we can do. The biggest problems come from kids that get overindulged. And the issue with overindulgence is not just that you've got an entitled brat. It's a bigger problem because when that youngster gets what they want on demand, what happens is we don't learn how to delay gratification. So in order to be successful in any venture, you have to step out of your comfort zone. Okay? Maybe you felt that way when you first started this radio show.
I did.
Okay. But you know what? You stepped out of your comfort zone, and you have to hang out with it, and then we become successful. What happens with the overindulged, spoiled individual is when the going gets tough, they go shopping. And so what happens is they become what I call grazers in life. I'll try this, so this got a little frustrating, I'm not going to do this. I'm kind of afraid to try this. So they limit their opportunities to really feel good about themselves because they grew up with this overindulged sense of entitlement.
I would call that, I can totally relate to that, and I see so many different types of people, especially here in LA. I think it's a big melting pot, and struggling with just consumption of, and I'm not just talking about alcohol or drugs, I'm just consumption, just going after buying things, living this like life of just spending, and they're not happy. They're not happy people, going after this life of consumption. So I can understand, I can relate to what you're saying, that at some point you've got to slow down and go, you can't make yourself happy by going and grabbing and wanting things. Like there's got to be more than that.
And that even comes with kids and their toys. If you've noticed, the children at Christmas time are getting all these presents. Nothing means anything. I had it was a very dramatic experience for me. Really changed a lot of what I did with gift giving with my own children. I went to Europe, and my son was 8 years old, and we visited a doctor, and she had in her home, there was an apartment, her housekeeper lived there with her little son who was 8 years old. And so he wanted to show me his car collection. So I go down to this room, his little room, which was very neat. The reason it was very neat, of course, was he didn't have a lot. He had a bookcase, and he had some books there. But the most important thing is he had this car collection. So he had this bookcase, and he had maybe 6 or 7 cars. And so he took one of the cars like this, and he gave it to me to look at the car. And, of course, I looked at the car, and I'm complimenting him on the car. And I handed the car back. And when I handed the car back, he took, I was holding the car like this, and he wiped it down, maybe my fingerprint should be, and put it back on the shelf. And at that moment, I was struck with the fact that there isn't one thing that my son would own that he would have that pride, that he would have taken it, and I came back on a tear. Out goes everything. And anytime a new present comes in, we have to give something to the shelter. And it really put a huge change in how I was going to gift my kids. Not with a lot of stuff, with maybe 1 or 2 things that were substantive that they would really appreciate. That little boy, from he wiping off that car, I just sort of went, oh my God.
It's real. That's a
boing.
That is a pretty meaningful story. I can only imagine being in that moment with him and how that impacted you. I mean,
and I really appreciated something. I have 5 grandchildren. Something that my daughter did that I thought was very important. My granddaughter must have been about 5, and I think Carrie on a television show saw something about foster kids. And foster kids don't have their own pajamas. They move from home to home. And so Carrie said to Ava, look, can we ask everyone's coming to your birthday party to bring pajamas? You'll get a gift from your grandparents, and you'll get a major gift from us. And my granddaughter said yes. And Carrie got 50 pairs of pajamas. And they took those pajamas down and gave them to foster care. I thought that was a terrific lesson that Carrie was doing to sort of teach that sense of we want to give. We don't need so much. Now, I must admit that my granddaughter had a moment of hesitation when one of the pajamas was like a Disney princess.
Oh, she wanted those.
She looked at me and said, Ava, do you have a Disney princess? And she says, yes, Grandma.
So, what I'm hearing, so we've talked about allowance and, earnings and that, and savings and investment and giving, too. Like what we just got to in the point of the conversation is teaching our children about giving. do you want to expand on why you think that that's so important as a lesson of money?
I think that's a hugely important. When I talk about wealth, I talk about 4 different capital areas. I talk about the wealth of a family is built of human capital, of intellectual capital, of financial capital, and of social capital. And social capital becomes extremely important in terms of the values. And when you know that you can give money away and create such positive feelings, then you're less inclined to be that person that has to acquire. And you're using your money in a way that is productive and really gives meaning. It's much more meaningful to think that you could give money and feed a child who would go hungry than to give a child another toy that they may or may not use. And kids respond to that. Children are very sensitive. A child sees another child crying and they say, why is that child crying? And so they are naturally caring and naturally giving. And so I think you reinforce that by being a family that's philanthropic. Now, there's another aspect of philanthropy that I use very much since, many of my clients have substantial wealth. And when these families, my families that have been the most philanthropic, have kids who do not grow up believing that they're going to hit the lottery, they basically feel that the bulk of the wealth of the family will go to philanthropy. And they are not entitled. They develop their own skills and their abilities because the family has given a lot of money away. And they know that that's an important value. So it's helped them, in a sense, become more competent. Philanthropy can be used in some wonderful, wonderful ways, just even as a family. I mean, obviously you have a foundation, it's a much more controlled way of giving money, but you don't have to have a foundation for family to sit together and say, we have X amount of money that we are going to give away. Let's talk about it as a family. And now let's look at where we want to give the money. Let's look at their budget. Let's look at how they're going to use the money. So again, we're teaching that, an organization needs to have a budget. There needs to be a reason why they're going to use the money, how they're using the money. If you tell an 8-year-old that you have $500 to give to the community, and this 8-year-old goes to the Humane Society and finds out what they need, and they have to come back with a little report, and they have to report to the family, this is why the Humane Society needs $500. And we make the grant. Now, what that child needs to do at the end is go back and find out what they really did with the money and report. You've given that child an enormous sense of empowerment. First of all, they've been able to give the money away. They have to know what the money's being used for. They had to stand up and make a presentation to the family committee. Then they have to go back and find out how it was used and come back. So using money there has just been an invaluable teaching experience.
Again, what's coming up for me, of course, I focus on relating and communication and wanting people to be in better relationships with each other, but just this idea of money being able to do that, and all these examples that you're given in the lessons, I just see this kid going through this project of finding out where he's going to give the money and doing the report, of building self-esteem and building the communication skills where I can look my mom and my dad in the eye and say, look at I did this, and this is what they're doing. I love this. It's very eye-opening to me to see money being used as a way to keep people together.
And look at people who really exude that real positive attitude. The major philanthropists do this. I mean, they are excited about what they're doing. They feel very fulfilled. It's not about a new thing, a new piece of this or a new piece of that. It's about a project that they did. And there's a certain amount of energy when you're around those kind of people that I find just to be absolutely so enriching in terms of my relationships with those clients.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like we've done a good job of really speaking to the parents that are listening in terms of some of the things that they can do and consider about teaching their children about money. What would you say to people that are kind of maybe like me, that didn't grow up with the lessons and maybe they have some intimidation around it, and just to encourage them, it's not too late. Here's some things that you could do as a young adult, as you're in your early career. There's really no time that I think it's too late, but what would you say to an adult that wants to develop a healthier relationship with money and investing and giving?
Well, today, there are so many resources. For example, let's take you. You want to start to learn about it. First of all, budgeting would be really important. If I'm talking to any young person out, working, We're talking about how are you budgeting and how much are you saving?
Mm-hmm.
What are you saving in terms of whatever the monies that you are making? And I really look at this next gen. This is where I sometimes kind of think about this, and this just happened this week again. My husband and I, was our anniversary.
Congratulations.
So we were out at an expensive restaurant to celebrate, and I looked around, and this is an expensive restaurant during the week. I can't tell you how many young people were there.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought went through my mind, are they saving anything?
Yeah. You're like, I know I could be here, but why are you here?
It was kind of, I can do this.
Yeah.
What are you doing that during the week you're out spending this kind of money?
Yeah.
Because if I basically looked, I bet you there's a lot of debt.
Yeah.
And if I was beginning to speak to somebody that was young, I would say, first of all, I don't want to see any credit card debt.
Yeah.
Zero. You pay so much interest on credit card debt, so the first thing to do is cut up, if you're inclined to run credit card debt, cut out the credit cards and go strictly on cash. Now you become aware of exactly what you can spend.
Yep.
That's one of the big things. Then when somebody's on the path and they say, well, now I really understand this, I've got this budget, I've got some extra money. Now we learn about investing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many classes and tools that you can take so that you actually learn how to invest.
Mm-hmm.
And choose somebody that can help you, a good professional.
And that you probably relate to, right? So you try to find fellowship in something that you're connected to. So if you're an entrepreneur, you might want to Google or search investment for entrepreneurs, or if you feel an affiliation to just women's groups, or
or go back to even the extension classes, or taking a basic investment 101. So that you understand the terms, because what's very difficult, if you are naive, you don't know the investment professional to pick, because everyone shows you a chart that goes up.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw any investment professional say, oh, by the way, Lee, here was my chart this year. It went down.
Hire me.
I always go up. So you've got to know enough that you can really at least have a sense of, is that person making sense?
Mm-hmm. Do you recommend people trying to, there's apps and things now that you can just buy, you can buy stocks directly. You don't have to have somebody brokering.
You can start that way.
Maybe that's a way to learn, and then go and talk to money managers or brokers. Yeah.
Absolutely, you can start by doing that, but there's a lot of information that is out there.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, adult education schools, and there's classes that you can take. And as I said, it's not like you're not going to be investing at the upper. I always say there's investment 101, 201, and 301.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs to learn basic investing and management skills, which is 101. Okay, you need to do that. You need to really. And when someone says, "I just don't have a figure for numbers," this is ridiculous. Numbers, adding, subtracting,
numbers are your life.
This thing about numbers.
Do you cook? You have to have an idea of numbers,
yes,
right?
What is this? With that, I'm not asking you to do very complicated.
And our phones have calculators.
Yes, we can always add.
Yeah.
So you really do. That empowers you.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't understand, it's very frightening.
Mm-hmm.
It's a world. It's a different language. People are talking acronyms that you don't really understand.
Mm-hmm.
So you get intimidated. And so I don't want people to be intimidated. I want them to feel that this is really an important part of what I need to do and what I need to learn. There are some great talk shows in terms of managing money.
Podcasts now too that are all about money. Yeah.
So there's no reason that somebody can't do some self-education if you didn't have it growing up.
And even removing the taboo, but because I suspect we all have friends that are doing a better job at it than you may think, and you might be putting a label on how well you're doing, but being able to have a conversation with your friends about money, like, well, what do you do? I like the idea of forming an investment group that you're meeting for coffee or brunch, and just doing that with friends. And it's kind of a little competitive and fun. Like, how are your stocks doing? But I think that would be a good idea as well.
How do I read the financial statement? How do I really know?
Yeah.
And there, a lot of women's investment clubs that have been formed. Yeah. There are groups that have really done that, and that's so hot. That's so positive, and that is really so productive.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, we have to step out of our comfort zone. If right when you feel like a little, I don't want to do this, or I've got this bad feeling about something, that's the exact time you should go for it. You should do it, because that's an opportunity for growth.
Absolutely.
And where you're giving that situation or issue power is like by labeling it, oh, I can't do this. But as soon as you go, oh, well, I'll try and take one step, you've overcome it right away. And then you take another step and you take another step. So those are opportunities for growth, just to learn something, talk to somebody about it.
And that's true in philanthropy, too. I think maybe it's a little bit easier to get involved in philanthropy than it is for investing. I mean,
yeah.
But both, there's a wealth of information about philanthropy, ways to get involved. But I think it would be easier, you can get involved in philanthropy because you know what touches your heart. But it's a little bit more complicated with the investing. It's very interesting, since I work a lot with multi-generation families. So we're really looking at how do we preserve the wealth generationally. So that really means that generation 1 made the wealth. I need generation 2 to understand stewardship. And one of the ways that I was able to teach the clients that I've worked with is actually it's a fun little thing. It's chicken and eggs.
Okay.
And with all the families that I've ever worked with, I draw 3 chickens. Okay, and the chickens lay 2 eggs. So we have family number 1, and there are 4 members of that family, and they got 2 eggs. They're living a nice life. They eat the eggs, they take good care of the chicken. In the next generation, the chicken's still laying 2 eggs, but now there's 9 people. The 9 people are eating the 2 eggs, not exactly living the same kind of lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
But they're still taking care of the good chicken, and the chicken, the next generation is laying these 2 eggs.
Yeah.
And this time we've got 19 people eating it. So pretty soon we're going to go to the chicken. Okay. Then I have another kind of client that says, it's got a nice chicken and chicken's laying eggs, and you know what? We are going to have a great time. We're eating the eggs and the chicken, and this is where you get the expression shirt sleeve to shirt sleeve in 3 generations. 1 generation makes it, the next generation has a terrific time, and by the time we're at the 3rd generation, we're at the drawing board. So that's my number 2 family. The chicken eats we eat the eggs and the chicken. Then I have family number 3. Family number 3, they have the same chicken, same good feed, 2 eggs. They only eat 1 egg, and they let another egg become a chicken. They invest it. So now at the next generation, we have 2 chickens, we have 4 eggs. We only eat half of the eggs every time, and we leave the rest for savings and investing. And that is a family that pyramids the wealth. And so years ago, one of the original families I started to work with, which was so out of whack with budgets, I came up with this chicken and eggs, and so they got we're near feather, and I have used that ever since. We talk about, are we eating all the eggs? Are we making chickens?
Yeah.
And when I talk about making chickens, that means, are you saving, are you investing?
Yeah.
Or are you eating both eggs? Because eating both eggs is not what we want to be.
No, I'm never going to talk about chickens and eggs the same way again. I'll always have.
I would say it's a great visual, because they can visualize eating the chicken.
Yeah, I love it. Gosh, this has been such an amazing discussion. Is there anything that you think we've left out that you would just want to put out there as encouragement, either?
I want to be encouraging because, one of the things that causes an enormous amount of stress is concern about finances. When you go to sleep and you don't know if you're going to be able to pay the rent or the bills, I tell you, it's a very uncomfortable, uneasy type of life. I actually can't imagine that, what it must be like. And so this is why it's so important that we master money. We don't let money control us. We get a control over money, and we get a control over our lives. And we make the kind of choices that are going to enable us to go to bed at night and sleep and know that we've got something in reserve. But that takes discipline. It really is. It's a personal discipline. You might not be able to have everything that you want all at the same time. You may have to live in a neighborhood that is not your choice neighborhood, but you're living within your budget.
I think we even have to get around how we feel about discipline. Like when you hear that word, or sometimes when people say that word, it's like, oh, I have to be disciplined about it. Discipline is a form of care. We really need to reclaim that as a form of care, and it's not a bad thing. Like, disciplined people are successful people. Disciplined people don't have as much stress. Disciplined people have the freedom to be happy. There's more joy in their life because they've laid down some foundation of discipline that allows them to go, oh, those are the lines. I just don't cross that line now. I know how to handle this. So I think there's an opportunity to redefine how we look at the word discipline and the idea of it.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I never thought that people would react to discipline as, something I have to do. It really is, do you want to be in control of your life, or do you want outside forces to be buffering you back and forth?
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I think most people would say, I want to be in control. This is my life. This is not a dress rehearsal. I'm passing here one time. Let me be in charge. I want to be proactive and not reactive. And I think that's kind of the atmosphere that I want to create around money.
Yeah.
Now, how are we proactive and use it for its highest purpose?
Absolutely. All right. Well, so there's 2 more things that we do on the show. This has been such an amazing conversation. I can't wait to share out all your links so people can know where to find Dr. Lee and find her books, and reach out if you have some more questions. So I will do that when we archive this show, so everybody can get in touch and know about your wonderful books. 2 things that we like to do on the show. So the first one is when we go so deep in a topic, which we have, we get one side of you, and I'd like to show that there's always more information available, and we can change how we're relating at any given time. So the way that I demonstrate that is I have this fun little box of just random little questions. I'm just going to randomly ask you a question.
Did I get a random question?
Yeah, it's going to be off topic. Now, sometimes the box has a mind of its own. We might get a question on finance. I don't know. So let's just see. Let me see what I can get. Okay. See, this is one of those times. So we're talking about finance. The question that I pulled was, what's the poorest you've ever been? I can ask a different one.
Well, I can answer that question.
Okay.
Because, I feel very blessed, because I've never been poor. And I attribute that to, I was raised in the Midwest. I think Midwest, we have great values.
We do. Work hard.
We are.
Yeah.
But, my father was a physician, and we were very careful, though. I was taught that we lived a very nice life, but there was always this, we're not going to overspend. We don't take out people's eyes. So I really, both my sister and I had that philosophy. And very frankly, I remember something that was quite shocking to me, and I always was careful with money. My sister and I always hoarded our allowances, and I went to college, and my first job, I was always careful then. I was careful as, I think that just came to be practical, to look for sales, to be able to get good bargains. That was just how I was raised. First job when I was in a school district, I can so remember I was sitting in the lunchroom, and they were talking with the teachers, and they were talking about somebody who just came out of the military. And they said, the most amazing thing is he has no debt. And I sat there saying, oh my God, maybe I better not tell you, I have no debt. Because we were raised with no debt.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, even our car was paid for.
Yeah.
And so so that question, I can't really relate to that, because managing money, I think and I'm very grateful for my parents.
Yeah.
The more I look back, I think, you sort of take your parents for granted as you're growing up. The older you get, you realize how important the lessons that they taught me were, particularly in the career that I chose, and dealing in that kind of very affluent population. I just kept my head straight.
Yeah.
I remember one time saying to my mom, because there was somebody who was very wealthy in our community, is he very, very rich? And my mom said, he puts his pants on one leg at a time.
And there you go. And you could also take that question and talk about it poor in spirit or rich in spirit. And what I get from you is you were raised rich in spirit too. That great lessons, strong,
close family, but the Midwest.
Yeah, and to be fair, when Dr. Lee was talking, and just to give a shout out to my own parents, my mom is the best at finding bargains and finding a good deal, and I do have that. And budget, and there were some lessons about budgeting. Maybe not just a sit down, let's talk about it, but I know that they were doing it.
And you saw them do it.
Yeah, I know that they were doing it. Both my parents, and my stepmother is an accountant, and she's great. She is really great about putting budgets together. So to be fair, I do remember those lessons now as we talked more.
So you had more lessons.
Yeah,
than you thought,
and I am a bargain shopper, and I get good deals. I know how to get a good deal. My mom sold cars most of her life, and I know how to get a good deal out of somebody. So that is a thing.
And you see, that's a lesson. With I have 5 grandchildren. One granddaughter who really is closest to me, I have taken her shopping when she was young, and I always told her to go to the sale rack first. She always goes to the sale rack.
Yeah.
she goes first to the sale rack.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to teach her about the value of getting things.
And I think too, I've always learned the price of the actual cost of how things were made and the actual cost to produce it. So I started out in fashion and retail, and so I've always known that. So I'm not willing to overpay for something, and I want to know how it was produced too. I want to know who was involved and what they went through to produce it too. So that's really important to me as well. So those lessons were there, and I appreciate my family for that. All right. So thank you for answering that. It's so funny sometimes how the box works. I think it has some
They wanted
power.
that to come out.
Yeah, they wanted to. They're like, you guys are doing so well on this topic. Keep going. Keep going. We don't want a random question. But there's one more thing that we do on the show, and I call this Heart Swell. And why I do this and what it is just really, being able to give a shout out or some acknowledgement to a person in your life that's really made a difference. That you just feel deserves some credit and some acknowledgement. And the reason that I do this is I believe that expressing deep feelings shouldn't be scary, and we should do it more often. And I want to encourage people to see what it looks like and do it as well, and see that it's not a scary thing. And hopefully by doing it, just raise some levels of empathy in the world. Like, look at what this person meant to this person, and consider saying some nice things to somebody else. So that's why I do it. And with that in mind, do you have somebody that you would want to give a heart swell to, or did someone come up?
Well, the two people that come up immediately when I have to think about how I've lived my life would obviously be my parents. And I've learned so much. And I really realized that when I started to parent myself, honestly, how much I had learned from my own parents. And I also learned how much that helped me professionally. When I came into a district like Beverly Hills, where there were clearly some parenting aspects that were very different than the parenting aspects that I had experienced, I think I was really able to make a real impact, bringing that Midwestern sensibility.
I've always said that.
Into the mix.
Yeah.
And it's worked with the clients that I have dealt with, ever since in my consulting practice. So the basic shout out, unfortunately, my parents are no longer with me, but I was fortunate to have them. My mother died at 96 and my dad at 90, so I feel very blessed.
They live a long, happy life.
They were there to really give me a tremendous amount of input. And I hope that I'm able to do that same thing with my two children.
That's amazing.
And my grandchildren.
I actually really love when someone does a heart swell to someone that's no longer with us, because it reminds us that never take it for granted how much impact you're making in people's lives, even when you're not in day-to-day interactions. Like, that impact is still part of you, and you're still thinking about them. So I think it's a great testimony to relationships and doing well by each other, and being close to people, that they stay in your life.
And I think it's important that you give people an opportunity to even say it to someone who's living, because I think very often we don't say enough to the people who are important to us while they're alive.
Yes.
And we remember them when they're dead, but you got to say it when they're alive.
See, heart swell, people. I think if there's anything that if you can't find a lesson about money in this show, I think you have to listen to it again, number one, because it's there. But two, another thing that I think that Dr. Lee is saying, that, reach out to people. Like, give your own heart swells and talk to people and tell them how important they are. And, that's just a segue to have some of these difficult conversations. I kind of look at that as like a bank account of communication, too. When you go out of your way to say something nice to someone and they feel that, they get that, receive that as a gift, you feel good about giving it to them, you now have some allowance in the bank to have some difficult questions or difficult conversations.
You withdraw.
You
withdraw. That's the whole thing about parenting. You build up the positive bank account so you can withdraw when you have to.
Yeah.
And you will have to withdraw at some point. Everything isn't.
See? So it's a full show on relating and money and managing bank accounts and managing relationships. I loved this.
This was a pleasure.
I loved having you on here. What a great show. So that just brings us to the end. Like I said, when I do post the archive of the show, I will be sharing your links and links to books so you can learn more about Dr. Lee. And in terms of next week, our next week's show, I'm going to have a gentleman by the name of John Weiland on the show, who is an intimacy expert. And we're going to talk about healing from a breakup. I think that's an important topic to cover in terms of relating. So we'll be focused on that. In the meantime, if you want to talk more about what you heard today, you can reach out to me on Twitter at LoveMoreNow or Instagram at RelateWithSteph. And we do have a public shared experience event coming up at the Relational Center. That's Wednesday, August 30th. So I'd love to see you there. In the meantime, as always, I just want to encourage people to relate with more curiosity. I mean, if there's another thing that you can pull from the show is, don't stop when things get painful. Ask some questions, have a little curiosity, go out of your comfort zone. So there's a reason why in the show, always relate with more curiosity. I promise you that, by learning and extending yourself, there will be some joy and happiness in that mix. So thank you again, Dr. Lee.
This was great fun, and I hope it's been helpful to the audience.
Oh, I can't imagine how it couldn't be. It was such a great show. See you guys next Tuesday. Thanks so much.
You're listening to Relatable with Stephanie Michelle, only on LA Talk Radio.